Hey Planeswalkers, this is Eric again from Bane Alley Magic, bringing you some more Commander deck techery. Today we are talking about Archangel Avacyn version 3. That's right, Super Saiyan 3 Ultimate Hero. So, Archangel Avacyn says she's 3 and 2 white for a 4/4 angel with flash, flying, vigilance, and when Archangel Avacyn enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. When a non-angel creature you control dies, transform Archangel Avacyn at the beginning of your next upkeep. And she transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, a 6/5 red angel with flying, and when this creature transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. Most Boros decks are aggro, but today you are witnessing version 3 of a Boros Ultimate Combo deck, and every card is about the combo. Avacyn herself plays an important role by giving our creatures indestructible, and she can even deal them damage when she flips into Avacyn the Purifier. Another important piece of the combo and an important part of the story of Avacyn is Guilty Conscience. 1 white for an enchantment. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage, Guilty Conscience deals that much damage to the enchanted creature. You know, Avacyn was guilty after she burned all those people alive, right? Well, we hope so. Anyway, Guilty Conscience is part of our combo. The final pieces of the puzzle are the stars of the show. They are the 7. The Magnificent 7. Starring Mog Maniac,
Chris.
Spite Mare,
Harry. It's good to see you again, Chris.
Boros Reckoner,
Make it Vin.
Frilled Death Spitter,
The word is out you're looking for men.
Sun-Crowned Hunters, True Fire Captain, and finally, Spiteful Sliver.
Insult swallowed. None.
We're 7.
So the first of the 7 to arrive was Mog Maniac, 1 in a red for a 1/1 goblin that says whenever Mog Maniac is dealt damage, it deals an equal amount of damage to target opponent. Stand clear if he gets an itch. So next to come along was Spite Mare, 2 and 2 hybrid red-white for a 3/3 elemental. Whenever Spite Mare is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or player. I knew a creature carved from a dream of wild freedom. Any attempt to leash or exploit it failed, and at terrible cost. The classic Boros Reckoner, 3 hybrid red-white for a 3/3 Minotaur Wizard. Whenever Boros Reckoner is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or player. And for 1 hybrid red-white, you can give him first strike until the end of the turn. Imagine a thunderstorm that's also a tactical genius. That's him. Next is Sun-Crowned Hunters, 4 and 2 red for a 5/4 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals 3 damage to target opponent. 1 alone is dangerous, and they are never alone. Frilled Death Spitter is 2 and a red for a 3/4 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever Frilled Death Spitter is dealt damage, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. Nothing says trouble like a reedy hiss with a hint of liquid gurgle. Gurgle. True Fire Captain is 2 red and 2 white for a 4/3 human knight with Mentor. Whenever this creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power, which is pretty much almost every other creature in the deck, actually. So, whenever True Fire Captain is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. See the pattern here? You get what's going on? You see what's going on? Alright? And finally, there was Spiteful Sliver. 2 and a red for a 2/2 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. Victories against the Hive are tragedies. So, the Magnificent Seven are all essentially creatures that have the same trick. When they are dealt damage, they can deal that much damage to an opponent. So, the trick here is to enchant one of these creatures with Guilty Conscience. Whenever it deals damage, Guilty Conscience deals that much damage to the creature. Whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. And then when it deals that damage to target player, then Guilty Conscience deals that much damage to it. When it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. And then you use Avacyn to give it indestructible so it doesn't die. And you can just infinite loop this, right? As long as it's indestructible, any one of these creatures can set off the infinite loop with Guilty Conscience. But Guilty Conscience is the only card of its kind. That is the trick. You know, it'd be really cool if they could reprint something like this, but there is nothing else like Guilty Conscience in Magic at all. Like, there's nothing else that'll set this off as an infinite combo. There's only one copy of Guilty Conscience, and it's an enchantment. So, we gotta have lots of ways to tutor that up. We got several ways to give our creatures indestructible, including Avacyn herself. We got ways to deal our creatures damage, but this will also go off when the creature attacks, right? So when it attacks, it's either going to be dealt damage or it's going to deal damage, or both, and then either one of those instances will set off the combo. You know, if it goes unblocked, it's still going to deal damage to the player, which will set off Guilty Conscience, and the infinite combo is going to happen. Right? If they block it, they're going to deal it damage, and it's also going to deal their creature damage. So, yeah, the combo can be interrupted with, you know, people responding by instant speed, exiling our creature, and so we have lots of ways to protect the combo in the deck. Previous builds also had some other Lifegain tricks with Volcano Hellion and Heartless Hidetsugu, but I took those out because even though you can gain infinite life, that doesn't mean you'll win the game, and they definitely turn the table against you. You know, when you have so much life, the whole table turns on you, and you can still lose to commander damage, infect, people just playing win conditions, and even spells that can straight up change your life total. Still, the infinite life combos aren't bad. They just make you a target and they draw a lot of attention to you. And with this deck, it's really more about playing it cool, not being scary, acting like we've got nothing going on, and then boom, we win and catch everyone with their pants down. I used to run the Immortal Sun because, you know, why not? A totally amazing card for Commander, right? The Immortal Sun. Well, it turns out the next time someone plays their Acidic Slime or Decimate or Crush Contraband, they 100%, no remorse, kill your Immortal Sun.
Same as they wear pants. That's expected.
Bang, gone. This thing draws targets like a Praetor. So cards like the Immortal Sun are, you know, obviously they're really good, but they're so good that in a 4-player game, I haven't yet had one that lasted more than a couple turns around the table. And when you're playing with the Ultimate Combo deck, you know, that's exactly the kind of attention you don't need. So that being said, I want to point out that this is not a budget-friendly deck. This is a deck I pull out when I've, you know, either been losing all night and I want to just take home a win, or if I'm actually, you know, trying to play in a competition, this is the deck I would use, my Boros deck. So anyway, we've gone through the Magnificent Seven. Let's talk about some tutors. So the deck has quite a bit of tutors, 11 tutors in total. 6 of them are non-creatures, so we got 5 creature tutors here. Imperial Recruiter, 2 and a red for a 1/1 human advisor. When this enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So you can find Spiteful Sliver, you can get Mog Maniac. He can get a bunch of creatures in this deck, so let's put him aside for a second. And whenever I see one, I'll say Imperial Recruiter. But we also have Recruiter of the Guard, which is very similar. 2 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier. And it says, when Recruiter of the Guard enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So this can also get Spiteful Sliver. It can also get Frilled Death Spitter. And it can get Mog Maniac. Right? Of course, they can get each other also, but that's kind of more rare. So Imperial Recruiter can get Forerunner of the Empire, 3 and a red for a 1/3 human soldier. When Forerunner of the Empire enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. Whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature. So this can tutor up either Frilled Death Spitter or Sun Crowned Hunters, and it can also actually have them end up dealing damage to themselves so they can set off the combo. That's more of an instant speed thing, which we do have one way of accomplishing this combo where everything's instant speed, but most of the time that's not going to be the case. But yeah, I mean there's opportunity there obviously to have him actually set off the combo. I've actually had him set off the combo before, but I took out a few of those instant speed spells because that's only one special situation, and I have other ways of getting around that. So next is Heliod's Pilgrim, 2 and a white for a 1/2 human cleric, and this can be tutored for with either Imperial Recruiter or Recruiter of the Guard. When Heliod's Pilgrim enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. We do have quite a bit of enchantments in the deck, but as far as auras, it's pretty much Guilty Conscience. We don't have any other auras really in the deck. Next is Academy Rector, 3 and a white for a 1/2 human cleric. When Academy Rector is put into a graveyard from play, you may remove Academy Rector from the game. If you do, search your library for an enchantment card and put that card into play. Then shuffle your library. So you do have to have a way to kill Academy Rector. As soon as people know what's going on, they're not going to block Academy Rector. They're going to let Academy Rector get through with the 1 damage. So you kind of have to, I feel like the better choice is to just leave Academy Rector up as a blocker, because people do still want to attack you, but if you're just attacking them with Academy Rector, it's rare they're actually going to block it and give you the effect, right? So we do have quite a few enchantments in the deck. We have 6 enchantments in the deck that are all really good choices. So of course there's also Guilty Conscience, right? That's what we might want to get a lot of the time. And we have about 4 sacrifice outlets in the deck, and this can be searched for with either Imperial Recruiter or Recruiter of the Guard. Next we have Nomad Mythmaker, 2 and a white for a 2/2 human cleric, and you can pay a white and tap it to put target enchant creature card from a graveyard into play, enchanting a creature you control. So this can get Guilty Conscience out of the graveyard and back into action if someone has somehow countered our combo, right? And Guilty Conscience is in our graveyard, or we could even possibly discard Guilty Conscience and get it back with Nomad Mythmaker. And that would be a way to sort of play around it, right? Because if you just tutor for Guilty Conscience, everybody's going to be like, what are you doing tutoring for this card? It must be some combo piece. But if you just discard it, right, everyone's going to be like, oh sure, he discarded this, right? And no one's going to see it coming, right? So little more espionage there. Next we have Sun Titan, 4 and 2 white for a 6/6 giant with vigilance. Whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this can get quite a few of our creatures in the deck back. It can get Guilty Conscience back. It can get some of our enchantments back, some of our artifacts back. We have a lot of artifacts in the deck. Might as well tell you now, we got 18 artifacts in the deck. That's because we're playing Boros. and we got to make up for a few of the Boros shortcomings to make up for the lack of card draw and ramp. So Sun Titan, most important for getting back Guilty Conscience, but like I said, you can get back other pieces of the combo too. Next we have Grand Abolisher, 2 white for a 2/2 human cleric. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. So this protects the combo to where your opponents not only can't cast spells, but they can't even, activate their creature ability or something to respond to the combo. As long as it's our turn, then nothing's going to stop us as long as Grand Abolisher is out. Next we have Platinum Angel, 7 mana for a 4/4 angel with flying. It's an artifact angel, and you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. So this is there if, things are going wrong and we just want to hold on long enough to where we can pull the combo off, right? And this also works really good with some of the indestructible giving abilities in the deck. Lots of opponents are going to have a hard time dealing with an indestructible Platinum Angel. So yeah, it just works out really well in the deck and kind of guaranteeing that, we win the game. We're going to take this one home. Sorry, guys. So yeah, that's what Platinum Angel's in there for. Similar effect with Fortune Thief. Fortune Thief is normally 4 and a red for a 0/1 human rogue. And it says damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. But it has morph, so you may cast this card face down as a 2/2 creature for 3 mana, and you turn it face up at any time for its morph cost. So you first cast it for only 3 mana as a 2/2 creature with no abilities, and then you morph it into Fortune Thief for just 2 red. So I think that's a much better deal than paying 5 mana for this creature up front, and I guess that's obviously the point of morph, right? Is you pay the mana slowly over time. But also just the idea that your opponents think that they're going to kill you and Fortune Thief is going to save you. So that's how it's similar to Platinum Angel. It's just sort of like, as long as this is alive, I'm probably not going to lose the game, right? Next we have Knight of the White Orchid. 2 white for a 2/2 human knight. When Knight of the White Orchid enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a Plains card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So we got a little bit of ramp here on a white creature. And I forgot to say that, Knight of the White Orchid, Nomad Mythmaker, Grand Abolisher, Fortune Thief, all of these can be tutored up with Recruiter of the Guard. And let's see, the Fortune Thief can be tutored up with Imperial Recruiter. And Recruiter of the Guard can also get Oreskos Explorer. 1 and a white for a 2/2 Cat Scout. When Oreskos Explorer enters the battlefield, search your library for up to X Plains cards, where X is the number of players who control more lands than you. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So yeah, in Commander, this could potentially get us 3 land cards into our hand. But of course, that's saying that we are behind on lands compared to everyone else. But so yeah, perfect for only 2 mana. I mean, not a bad deal. Next is Solemn Simulacrum, 4 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem. When Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. When Solemn Simulacrum dies, you may draw a card. So this is just one of the best ramp creature spells on an artifact that you can get. It goes in any deck, and especially in a Boros deck, our draw just isn't that powerful. The thing is that white has almost no card draw, and red almost has no card draw other than discard a card to draw a card, right? So we need spells like Solemn Simulacrum to make up for that. Mostly Solemn's in here though for ramp. Next is Thermopod, our first sacrifice outlet. It's 4 and a red for a 4/3 snow creature slug, and you can pay a snow mana to give Thermopod haste until the end of the turn. And it says you can sacrifice a creature to add 1 red mana to your mana pool. So instant speed sacrifice outlet, similar to Ashnod's Altar. And yeah, this will allow us to sacrifice our creatures, such as Academy Rector. But also, we might want to sacrifice our creatures to prevent our opponents from gaining control of them, to prevent our opponents from making copies of them, of course, to prevent our opponents from exiling them. In the case with our deck, if our opponent is about to exile Guilty Conscience, we really want to respond by sacrificing whatever creature Guilty Conscience is enchanting so we can get Guilty Conscience into the graveyard instead of, having Guilty Conscience be exiled. But yeah, there is, of course, Academy Rector in the deck that we want to be able to sacrifice to tutor for an enchantment. And also, there's the triggered ability of Archangel Avacyn, where we can sacrifice a creature to have her flip and then deal damage to all creatures, which can set off the combo also. So, those are the creatures. We have a total of 21 creatures in the deck, plus Avacyn, so 22 creatures. So we're moving on now to the card draw. Actually, a couple more sacrifice outlets. So Culling Dais is sacrifice and card draw. It's 2 mana for an artifact that you can tap to sacrifice a creature and put a charge counter on Culling Dais. And for 1 mana, you can sacrifice Culling Dais to draw a card for each charge counter on Culling Dais. This is great. It's exactly what we want, to sacrifice a creature and potentially get some value out of it. I mean, this is like a 2 mana sack outlet that will draw you cards for each creature that you've sacrificed with it. I mean, that is really cool. I put it in a lot of decks where we don't need to sacrifice like everything, like with this deck. We might want to sacrifice 1 creature, we might want to sacrifice more creatures, but most of the time we wanted to sacrifice 1 or 2 creatures. So this can sacrifice a creature and also, eventually draw us a card for every creature we'd sacrificed with it. So that's pretty great value. Next we have Ashnod's Altar, 3 mana for an artifact. You can pay 0 to sacrifice a creature and add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Play this ability as an interrupt. Obviously, this is an older printing of the card, but yeah. Ashnod's Altar, also just an instant speed sacrifice outlet that can add extra mana to our mana pool. These are now some protect our combo cards, right? So this one, Legion's Initiative, is going to protect our creatures. If we cast the creature and maybe we have to wait for a turn around the table and the other players, they all know what we're up to, right? So we might need to cast Legion's Initiative, have it waiting out there, waiting for somebody to try to target our creatures. So they're going to think it's just some anthem, right? So it's a enchantment for 1 red and 1 white that says red creatures you control get +1/+0, and white creatures you control get +0/+1, right? And that's what we want our opponents to focus on. Yeah, just read that. Don't read the next part, because you can pay a red and a white to exile Legion's Initiative and exile all creatures you control at the beginning of the next combat. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, and those creatures gain haste until the end of the turn. So even though this might bring them back on another opponent's turn, I mean, this is what you use to respond to your opponent trying to kill your creature, right? Because that's going to stop your combo. So you need your creature to survive that turn around the table. Legion's Initiative is perfect for that. You just respond to whatever they're doing by exiling your creature and bringing it back the next turn. So that's Legion Initiative. Then we have Silence, 1 white for an instant. Your opponents can't cast spells this turn. And so you cast this to start your turn, right, when you're going to pull off the infinite combo, so your opponents can't do anything about it. Also, this stops your opponents from pulling off a lot of infinite combos, so a really good card in general. Next is Orim's Chant, 1 white for an instant, which has Kicker. You can pay an extra 1 white as you cast this spell. So it says target player can't play spells this turn, and if you paid the Kicker cost, creatures can't attack this turn. So this is both a silence and a fog in one. Of course, it only silences target player, whereas silences all your opponents. But anyway, this is really great for, number one, just preventing your opponent from attacking you, right? Saving you for that turn. But also preventing them from ultimate comboing, and most importantly of all, protecting our ultimate combo, right? We play this on the opponent who we think is going to have disruption for our ultimate combo. We play it on the player who has lots of open mana, so we make sure they can't do anything to stop our combo. And then we have Abeyance, 1 and a white for an instant. Until end of turn, target player can't play instants, interrupts, sorceries, or abilities requiring an activation cost, and you draw a card. So, same thing, it can stop their combo, it protects our combo, and it protects it really well because they also can't activate abilities. Yeah, and we draw a card. Sweet card. Love Abeyance. Next is Bolt Bend. 3 and a red for an instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, and you can change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So we do have like 5 creatures in here or something like that with power 4 or greater, so there's a chance we could cast this for just 1 red mana. But what's really great about this spell is this can counter a counter spell, or it can, obviously stop your opponent from targeting your creature with a destroy or exile spell and change the target to one of their creatures, one of your other opponent's creatures, right? So pretty great at protecting our creature, but also, yes, it will counter a counter spell. See how it will work is, say you're trying to cast your Boros Reckoner, right? And then your opponent casts counter spell in response, and then you cast Bolt Bend, and you change the target of counterspell to Bolt Bend. And so because Bolt Bend is going to resolve first, when counterspell resolves the spell it's now targeting, Bolt Bend will have resolved already, and so counterspell will be effectively countered. And so, it's a way to counter spells. And there's quite a few of these cards. I don't have them all in this deck, but I think they're all definitely worth considering. Next is the first of our removal spells, Swords to Plowshares, 1 white for an instant, exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. So it is a cheap spell, it's an instant speed spell, they gain a little bit of life, but we really don't care because our whole point is to just drain them of all their life all at once. Even if they've gained infinite life, we will kill them. Next is Path to Exile, 1 white for an instant, exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. So, not much of a downside for exiling their biggest, baddest creature for just 1 white mana. They get a land instead. Next is Forsake the Worldly, 2 and a white for an instant, exile target artifact or enchantment, and it has cycling for 2. So for 2 mana, you can discard this card to draw a different card. This is one of the new elements of the deck, is there is a lot more cycling in the deck now, because it's just something that, is really important for pulling off the infinite combo. We have essentially 4 different pieces of the infinite combo. We gotta give the creature indestructible, we gotta find Guilty Conscience, we gotta find one of the Magnificent 7, and then we also have to find some way to either have the creature deal damage or be dealt damage, right? So either by giving it haste or some other way of just directly dealing it damage. So cards like Forsake the Worldly with cycling are really important for digging through our deck. Sometimes we'll use them, sometimes we'll just cycle them away when we don't need them. Next is Mizium Mortars, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Mizium Mortars deals 4 damage to target creature we don't control, or we can overload it for 6 mana. So for 3 and 3 red, you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So 4 damage to each creature we don't control. Next is Divine Reckoning, 2 and 2 white for a sorcery. Each player chooses a creature he or she controls, destroy the rest, and it has flashback for 7. So you may cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost and then exile it. So it is a board wipe. Everyone gets to keep just one creature. That's all you need to pull off the infinite combo. And you get to do it up to 2 times. Pretty awesome. Next is Winds of Abandon. 1 and a white for a sorcery. Exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card. Those players put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their libraries. And you can overload this for 6 mana, just like Mizzium Mortars. So for 4 and 2 white, you exile each creature you don't control. And so you have just massive one-sided board wipe for 6 mana. Awesome. Next is Settle the Wreckage. 2 and 2 white for an instant. Exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic land cards, put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. So, again, mostly a one-sided board wipe. You wait for that player to attack you with all their huge creatures, and they can kiss them goodbye. Next is Akroma's Vengeance. 4 and 2 white for a sorcery. Destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And it has cycling for 3, so we can just discard this if we don't need it for 3 mana. Yeah, this will get rid of literally everything out there. Probably some of our own stuff too, unfortunately. But when we really need it, this is going to keep us alive. Next is Austere Command. 4 and 2 white for a sorcery. Choose 2. Destroy all artifacts. Destroy all enchantments. Destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. And destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So just whatever 2 options you need in the certain time moment that you're in. But just keep in mind that whatever 2 you choose, they will go in that order that's presented here. So if you chose artifacts and creatures converted mana cost 4 or greater, first all artifacts would be destroyed, and then the creatures with CMC 4 or greater. And that brings us to the ramp, starting with the classic Land Tax. So Land Tax is 1 white for an enchantment that says during your upkeep, if an opponent controls more land than you, you may search your library and remove up to 3 basic land cards and put them into your hand. Reshuffle your library afterward. So every turn, as long as someone has more lands than you, you get to tutor 3 basic lands and put them right into your hand. So this is almost like you're drawing 3 extra cards every turn, and then the next card that you draw, there's less likely of a chance that that card's going to be a land. So Land Tax is definitely like sort of almost ramp, but it is card draw, right, for 1 white mana. So a fabulous card in any white deck. But before we get into the rest of the ramp, I want to talk about a card that Land Tax works really well with, which is Tectonic Reformation. 1 and a red for an enchantment that says each land card in your hand has cycling for 1 red. And it itself also has cycling for 2 mana. But yeah, with Land Tax, you're getting 3 extra lands into your hand every turn. And if you have both Land Tax and Tectonic Reformation, all of your lands have cycling. So you can just keep discarding those lands to draw different cards. Right, so 2 cards that just work really well together. This gets you tons of lands, and this lets you get rid of the ones you don't need and draw different cards. So moving on with the rest of the ramp, we have Soul Ring. We have Talisman of Conviction, 2 mana for an artifact that taps for a colorless, or we can tap it for a red or a white and have it deal 1 damage to us. And then we have Crucible of Worlds, 3 mana for an artifact that says you may play land cards from your graveyard. Also works really great with Land Tax and Tectonic Reformation, right? The Land Tax Tectonic Reformation combo, we'll be putting tons of lands in our graveyard. So yeah, really sweet with Crucible of Worlds. Obviously also helps if someone's trying to blow up our lands. Next we have Extraplanar Lens. 3 mana for an artifact with imprint. When Extraplanar Lens comes into play, you may remove target land you control from the game. The removed card is imprinted on this artifact. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produced. So normally I put this in just monocolored decks, but this card is also pretty good in 2-colored decks that have a lot of basics, especially if you have land tax, right? So say you chose plains, then everybody's plains would be able to tap for 2 mana. If you chose snow-covered plains, everybody's snow-covered plains would be able to tap for 2 mana. So lots of times people, play snow lands with this just so their own mana gets doubled. Next we have Smothering Tithe, 3 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 mana. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token that has tap and sacrifice this artifact to add 1 mana of any color. So this is a fabulous ramp spell for white. Really glad Wizards printed this one, and I got them as soon as I could because they've definitely gone up in price now. But it's like a Rhystic Study for white ramp instead of blue card draw. But yeah, at first your opponents might start paying 2, but I mean, after a while, 2 mana is just too much just to prevent us from ramping a little bit. When it's Rhystic Study, they're going to be like, pay the mana, right? But when it's Smothering Tithe, they're not going to do it so much. So yeah, this is definitely going to get you some treasure tokens and help you ramp up. Next we have Conqueror's Galleon, 4 mana for a 2/10 artifact vehicle. When Conqueror's Galleon attacks, exile it at the end of combat, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And it has crew for 4, so you tap any number of creatures you control with total power 4 or greater. And this vehicle becomes an artifact creature until the end of the turn. So if you had 2 2/2s, you could tap them to crew this, or if you have, Archangel Avacyn, she can crew it all by herself. And so when you transform Conqueror's Galleon, it becomes this thing card, Conqueror's Foothold. So it's a land, and it'll tap for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. You can pay 4 and tap it to draw a card, and you can pay 6 and tap it to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So just a whole toolbox of abilities there that we can use. Ramp, card draw, recursion. Next we have Girapur Orrery. Girapur Orrery. I like to hear you say that with a slur. Girapur Orrery. 4 mana for an artifact that says each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So that's in addition to the card they draw for turn. So that player really is going to draw 4 cards for the turn if they have no cards in hand. So this is definitely a group hug card, and this is honestly the replacement for the Immortal Sun. This is card draw and ramp for only 4 mana, but instead of making you the enemy like the Immortal Sun does, Girapur Orrery is going to have everyone slapping you on the back saying, awesome, I'm going to keep you around so I can draw more cards and play more lands. So next we have Sensei's Divining Top, 1 mana for an artifact. It says you can pay 1 to look at the top 3 cards of your library and then put them back in any order, or you can tap it to draw a card and then put Sensei's Divining Top on top of its owner's library. So you basically reorder the top 3 cards of your library, and if you want, you can draw the top card by replacing it with Sensei's Divining Top. And so it just helps us dig for our pieces, right? We're always able to look at those top 3 cards. Next we have Incendiary Command, 3 and 2 red for a sorcery, and it says choose 2. It deals 4 damage to target player, or 2 damage to each creature, or destroy target non-basic land, or each player discards all the cards in his or her hand and then draws that many cards. So this is mainly in here to help us replace our hand and hopefully dig for our combo pieces. Next we have Reforge the Soul, 3 and 2 red. Each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards. And it has Miracle for 1 and a red, so you may cast this spell for its Miracle cost when you draw it if it's the first card you drew this turn. And so that's, before you kind of shuffle it into your hand, you kind of have to reveal it right after you draw it and say, okay, I'm going to do this right now. You can't like draw it and then dirtle around, You need to prove it's the card you drew for the turn. Next we have Staff of Nin, 6 mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw an extra card. And you can tap Staff of Nin to have it deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So not only is this card draw, but this is really important in the deck for activating the combo, having it deal the 1 damage to the creature so that it will deal damage to the opponent, so that Guilty Conscience will deal damage to it, and also being able to do it at instant speed, all, really important for making sure the combo goes off. Next we have Boros Charm, a red and a white for an instant. Choose 1. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player or permanents you control gain indestructible this turn, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. So Boros Charm just does a bunch of things. Most importantly for this deck, it makes all of our permanents indestructible. That's, our lands, our artifacts, our enchantment. So we do have ways of finding this at instant speed, tutoring it up and casting it. So this also, even if it's in our library, we have a way of casting it at instant speed and making sure our permanents have indestructible when we need them to. Next we have Nahiri's Machinations, 1 and a white for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. And for 1 and a red, it'll deal 1 damage to target blocking creature. So this is fabulous. It's just sticking around on the battlefield for just 2 mana, making sure once every one of our turns, our creature gains indestructible and we can set off the combo. There's also a small chance that you could use the second ability to actually activate the combo if somehow our creature was blocking, we gave it indestructible with Avacyn, flashed in Guilty Conscience somehow, and then just had Nahiri's Machination deal 1 damage to our blocking creature, but that's probably not going to happen, but it could. Next we have Chance for Glory, 1 a red and a white for an instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible. Not even until the end of the turn. They're just forever indestructible. Take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. So obviously, this gives you only 1 chance unless you have Platinum Angel. Platinum Angel says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. Here we go. So if you have Platinum Angel and you cast Chance for Glory, you're going to make Platinum Angel indestructible, and that's just going to be really hard for your opponents to deal with. It's also really good for activating the combo because on that extra turn, we can attack with our creature, as though it had haste, right? Because it's been around through our upkeep. So Chance for Glory, just an essential piece of this deck, absolutely. Both giving it indestructible at instant speed and giving us an extra turn to make sure that we can attack and set off the combo. Next we have our non-creature tutors, starting with Enlightened Tutor. 1 white for an instant, search your library for an artifact or enchantment card and reveal that card, shuffle your library, and put that card on top of it. So, like I said, we got 6 enchantments, we have 18 artifacts in the deck, so there's all kinds of stuff we might want to look for. Most of the time, we're going to just look for Guilty Conscience, try to get the combo out. Next we have Open the Armory, 1 and a white for a sorcery, search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So, I don't think we have, we do have 1 equipment, which is also pretty important. It's one of the last cards we're going to look at. So next we have Idyllic Tutor, 2 and a white for a sorcery, search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So for only 3 mana, you get to search for any enchantment you want. Kind of an expensive card though. Next we have Plea for Guidance, 5 and a white for a sorcery, search your library for up to 2 enchantment cards, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. So Plea for Guidance is pretty much exactly 2 Idyllic Tutors in 1 card. Pretty sweet. So here is that equipment I was talking about. It's Sunforger. 3 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+0. It has equipped for 3. And for a red and a white, you can unattach Sunforger and search your library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less and cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then shuffle your library. So this is just so essential in the deck, and making sure the combo goes off and making sure you can find whatever you need. So Sunforger can get you Boros Charm, Chance for Glory, Swords to Plowshares, Enlightened Tutor, Path to Exile, Silence, Bolt Bend, Orim's Chant, Forsake the Worldly, and then it can also get you Teferi's Protection. We're also running Teferi's Protection. It kind of got out of order there. But Teferi's Protection is 2 and a white for an instant that says, until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you have protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. While they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. They phase in as you before you untap during your untap step. And after you cast this, you have to exile Teferi's Protection. So this is one of the most important white cards ever printed. You know, it's the ultimate fog. It's the ultimate, I don't lose the game this turn, right? And it protects all of your permanents. So someone's tried to board wipe you, someone's trying to blow up your lands, you Teferi's Protection in response. And your life total can't even change. So your opponents can't drain you of life, and you have protection from everything. I mean, just the ultimate white card. It was printed in the Edgar Markov Vampire deck, and it has never been reprinted. So, Wizards, if you're out there listening, reprint this stupid card already. It's just a Commander essential. If you're playing a white deck in Commander, this is just going to help you no matter what you're doing. This will protect you. So our last tutor is Expedition Map. 1 mana for an artifact, and it says you can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice Expedition Map to search your library for a land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So Expedition Map will get you any land that you need. And since we're only playing a 2-color deck, we're actually including quite a few utility lands to help us for where a deck comes up short. And of course, the infamous Glacial Chasm. So the deck runs a total of 39 lands, but I only consider there to be 38 lands in the deck because Glacial Chasm is not a land, you know? It's just the ability on a land that doesn't tap for mana. So that not only does this not tap for mana, but when it comes into play, you sacrifice a land. You cannot attack, but most importantly, all damage dealt to you is reduced to 0. So when your opponents see this combo coming, they're going to gang up on you, and when 3 different people are attacking you, you know, you can just die in 1 turn. So Glacial Chasm will save you for multiple turns to make sure you can get your combo off. The cumulative upkeep is 2 life, so on the turn after you cast this, you have to start your turn by paying 2 life or sacrifice it. The turn after that, you have to pay 4 life or sacrifice it. The turn after that, you have to pay 6 life and sacrifice it. So it accumulates 2 life to the deal every turn. So yeah, you're taking a bit of damage there, but your opponents aren't able to deal you any damage. And in a 4-player game, that's just huge. That's going to keep you alive. Next, we have Desert. It taps to add colorless, or you can tap it to have it deal 1 damage to target attacking creature. Activate this ability only during the end of the combat step. So Desert can only be activated during the end of the combat step, but this is a way that we can instant speed, make sure our combo goes off if someone casts a fog, right, and prevents all combat damage. Then we can use this to make sure some form of damage goes through, and that's not combat damage. And so, yep, it won't matter if our opponent fogs, Desert will allow the combo to go off. Next we have Barbarian Ring, a land that taps to add a red mana to our mana pool. If we do, it deals 1 damage to us. And if we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard, that's what Threshold means, then we can pay a red and tap it and sacrifice Barbarian Ring, and it'll deal 2 damage to target creature or player. Activate this ability only if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. So as long as we got 7 or more cards in our graveyard, which our cycling lands can help us do, and our cycling enchantment can help us do, then yeah, Barbarian Ring can help us activate the combo, or trigger the combo instant speed. Speaking of instant speed, we have Emergency Zone, a land that taps to add a colorless to our mana pool, or we can pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice it, and we may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. So this is our way to cast Guilty Conscience at flash speed. Maybe with the Forerunner of the Empire, we can deal damage with the dinosaur and have the combo go off instant speed. Next, we have a few lands that'll give our creature haste. Slayer's Stronghold taps to add a colorless, or we can pay a red and a white and tap it, and target creature gets +2/+0 and gains vigilance and haste until end of turn. Next is Hanweir Battlements, a land that taps for colorless, or we can pay a red and tap it, and target creature gains haste until the end of the turn. And if we were running Hanweir Township, I'd talk about the bottom part, but we're not. This is only in here just so we can get that haste ability. Next we have Flamekin Village, a land that'll enter the battlefield tapped unless we reveal an elemental from our hand as we play it. So we do have 1 elemental in the deck, which is Spite-Mare. So if you happen to have Spite-Mare in your hand, then as you play this, it'll enter the battlefield untapped. But it taps to add a red mana to your mana pool, or you can pay a red and tap it, and target creature gains haste until the end of the turn. So, yeah, that's how we get the combo off. We cast the creature and make that sucker attack before anyone knows what hits them. Alright, so next we have a couple of lands that'll draw us cards. We have Gyre Reach Sanitarium, taps to add colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it, and each player draws a card and then discards a card. Somehow there's always someone who's mad about the discarding part, but I mean, it's only card advantage, right? But it was like, I don't want to discard anything, man. Right, so if your opponents are complaining, you're doing something right. Next we have Mikokoro, Center of the Sea, a land that taps for a colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it, and each player draws a card. Next is High Market, taps for a colorless, or we can tap it and sacrifice a creature and gain 1 life. Another sacrifice outlet on a land. Hall of Heliod's Generosity, a land that taps for a colorless, or we can pay 1 and a white and tap it and put target enchantment card from our graveyard on top of our library. Yeah, so we'll get Guilty Conscience back or whatever other enchantment we want. Next is Ghost Quarter, which taps for a colorless, or we can tap and sacrifice it to destroy target land. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle his or her library. So if our opponent has some really troublesome, crazy land, like Glacial Chasm, we can get rid of it with Ghost Quarter. Next is Reliquary Tower, which taps for a colorless, and we have no maximum hand size. Sweet. Next is Commander Tower. Taps for any color in our commander's color identity. Next we have Boros Garrison. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it comes into play, when it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. And you can tap it for both a red and a white. So I really like the bounce lands. They're not exactly ramp, but they guarantee you an extra land drop. So they do add up over time in a format where we're playing a long game, and we are eventually going to get to a point where we're missing a land drop. So this is making sure we're not missing one of those land drops, and that's pretty awesome. That's almost like ramp. Next we have Temple of the False God, a land that taps to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Activate this ability only if you control 5 or more lands. And if you don't control 5 or more lands on like turn 5 or 6, you're probably losing the game already. So I think Temple of the False God is an awesome card. I put it in pretty much almost every commander deck I've ever made. Next we have a couple of cycling lands. Forgotten Cave enters tapped, taps for a red mana, or we can cycle it away for one red. Sometimes we just have too many lands and we just want to get rid of them and draw something else. Secluded Steppe, same thing, enters tapped, taps to add a white, or you can cycle it away for 1 white. Needle Spires enters tapped. It taps to add red or white, or you can pay 2, a red and a white, and Needle Spires becomes a 2/1 red and white elemental creature with double strike until the end of the turn. It's still a land. So if we really need it, we don't have a lot of creatures in this deck, only 22 including Avacyn. So sometimes we'll just need that one extra creature just to, maybe equip Sunforge or 2 so we can tutor up our other stuff. Sometimes we just need a creature to just finish someone off. So yeah, I like Needle Spires in this deck. Next we have Rugged Prairie. Taps to add a colorless, or you can pay a hybrid red-white to add any combination of red-red, red-white, or white-white to our mana pool. So it's a mana fixer to make sure we have the right combination of colors for a spell. Sacred Foundry is our Mountain Plains. It enters tapped unless we pay 2 life. It'll tap for red or white. And then we have our Snow-Covered Lands. That's right, because we have the extra planar lands. We're running Snow-Covered Lands. We have 8 Snow-Covered Plains, and we have 9 Snow-Covered Mountains. And that's it. That's the Archangel Avacyn version 3 deck tech. If you like this video, hit that like button or that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions, any cards I should take out, any cards you think would be better. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Until next time, take care, take it easy.